Welcome one, welcome all, welcome to another exciting episode of Tales of Citizens right here on the Sound Strategy Network. I am Bridger, I will be your host today as we delve into the deep questions about Star Citizen. And we've got a great show for you today. I'm glad you got a hold of the program, however you may have found it. Tell a friend or two, won't you? But let me introduce my co-hosts for today. On my left, we have a good friend, Calathulu. Welcome, sir.
Gentlemen and ladies, I am sure there's at least one of you out there. Thank you very much for listening to our show today.
And on our right, we have our good friend Tim Young from Australia, getting up super early to join us. Thank you very much, sir.
Morning, guys.
And I have to say, you may notice that my entire spine is operating at a weird angle if you're watching the show on the YouTube, and that's because I hurt my neck. So please ignore, or if you'd prefer to think of it within the fiction, as we have learned from Chris Roberts, just pretend that my anti-grav systems are on the fritz. And so I'm trying to compensate.
This is what happens when you fail to follow my advice of clean living and bourbon.
All
I'm
right.
telling you, bourbon would solve your problem.
And as we determined earlier, if you hear me say "ow" and I rub my neck, that's the drinking game for this week. So let's move on. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things today, but the main part of the show is going to be discussing the in-fiction story, A Human Perspective, which is a very interesting story that I was a big fan of. And before we go there, though, we always start with Life in the Verse. What have we been doing in Star Citizen and out? Let's start with you, Callie. What have you been up to recently?
Way too much, actually. Armored Warfare has gone into their open beta, and it is truly an awesome game. I think it's a great World of Tanks successor. I don't know what the cash grab is going to be on this one. My.com, and there's actually a developer name that goes with it, but my.com is the website that I know oh so well. So let me bring this up here, and I can probably pop that in there. But it's like post World War II tanks, so it's things like reactive armor that like fires off to take out the anti-tank missile and things like that. My.com games. Okay, I'm gonna go with my.com, and if there's an actual developer under there somewhere, it's hiding from me at the moment. On top of that, I have been having a great time with World of Warships. Speaking of World of Tanks, I don't know what it is about the Navy that is so much fun, but naval combat is a great time. So I've been having a lot of fun as an American destroyer captain, and I want to say this as an American destroyer captain. If you want a life filled with excitement and danger, pilot those ships. Because, being spotted from 5 kilometers and having torpedoes that only go 4 kilometers, that's fucking amazing. I mean, you've got to get to knife fighting range with a battleship that kills you in one salvo, and if you can kill 2 of them, you are a god amongst mere mortals. It's a lot of fun.
Is World of Warships, is this like you're in third person behind the ship? What is the...
Yes and no. There is the third person behind the ship view. You got this whole isometric thing going. But then when you get in there, you get to the sniper mode. Okay, so as an American destroyer captain, as opposed to the Japanese destroyer captains, you end up with really good guns, but really crappy torpedoes. Japanese destroyers have better torpedoes, but shitty guns. So you're not going to shoot as much. Actually, as a Japanese destroyer captain, I've frequently not bothered firing my guns in a whole match. Instead, I sail in there and
I'm looking for gameplay footage. I can't find any.
Yeah, I actually have some videos I've taken of myself, and one, my personal favorite was, so I'm literally sailing between two battleships on the enemy team, having come around an island. And they won't shoot at me because they fear shooting each other, I think. I don't know. Maybe they didn't see me. They're still shooting at cruisers way across the map. So on the port side, I throw out a bunch of torpedoes, and then I turn around and do the same on the starboard side. And then as I make my turn, some other complete a-hole of a destroyer captain nails me with a salvo. I can't dodge because I'm going to ram a Japanese battleship if I do. But anyway, if you've got a chance at this, I'm not saying buy your way into the open beta. Don't do that. I never recommend that.
We don't want to encourage people to do.
I don't want to encourage that kind of
stuff.
thing. But it is a lot of fun. but it is still less fun.
Did he wait a minute? Hang on. Let me go back here for a second.
Okay.
It kind of looked like he drifted around. Yes, he drifted around those torpedoes. He Tokyo drifted.
You say yes. He pulled the whole Tokyo drift. You say that, but you do that. Like I have gone through, and the way you turn in a boat, causes you to slide a little bit, and then the torpedoes miss, and you're thrilled to death because the torpedo, which was going to kill you, did miss. And this one's not going to miss, and it's always a great feeling. So some cruisers get torpedoed. This is not a show about World Warships.
No, but can I argue? Can I go on a rant for a second here? Because this is called gameplay video, and not one frame of this video is gameplay. I mean, it may have been captured in an actual game, but I don't see an interface. I don't see anyone controlling anything. It's all like third camera. Like this is not what the game looks like when you're playing. That means it's not gameplay. Damn it. I want to see the interface. I want to see what people are doing. I want to see what the game looks like when I'm playing it, and this does not fulfill it. So
I'm going to go
fail at English.
If you turn your HUD off, and mind you, it's a Russian company. I mean, the failing English is probably their biggest thing.
Fair enough.
If you turn your HUD off, it looks like that. It's a great game. It's a lot of fun. It's better than World of Tanks, and okay, that's not hard, but it's still better than World of Tanks. So let's go with that.
Ow.
So after that,
I just made it worse.
Still not better than motherfucking dinosaurs. I have been really enjoying Ark Survival Evolved on a private server.
I've really been trying to enjoy that, but then when I found out I had to literally sit there collecting berries and feeding them to this thing for an hour and a half, and that was the game, I was like, nope, I'm done. But not interested anymore.
You haven't tamed a Triceratops or an Ankylosaur or a Brontosaurus
I know. I started
yet.
to. I was halfway through, and then the server crashed, and then I found out I'd have to start all over again and go through another hour and a half of that, and I said, no,
I have been there.
I'm not doing it.
You're repeating the words early access, but in a much more esoteric way. It is a massively early access game.
Oh, sure.
You can't help that. That said, it is a ton of fun to tame a Triceratops and then spend 20 minutes, and then you harvest like 600,000 of the goddamn berries. Having the right dinosaur for the right job makes it a lot better. And I realize as I say that, those are words I've wanted to say since I was 4. And I've never had the chance to say prior to this point.
It is always important to have the right dinosaur for the right job.
That's right. Exactly right. Very good call.
Speaking of that, everybody is saying Jurassic World is getting a lot of heat because it did not have feathers on its dinosaurs. I say it should get a lot of heat because its story is incomprehensible and incoherent and non-contextual and doesn't even make sense within its own context. And yeah, the characters were terrible.
There's actually
every character was terrible.
Good reason. There's a really good reason for the Jurassic dinosaurs not having feathers, and that is because when in the original Jurassic Park, from which all the future dinosaurs came from, those original experiments, when they were reanimating the dinosaur, they don't have enough DNA in the first place to recreate an entire dinosaur. They need some sort of post-carrier DNA. And because of, during the 90s, the misconception that dinosaurs were reptilian, they simply used reptilian carrier DNA. So the dinosaurs that they recreated were more reptilian than their actual historic counterparts. And that's the reason why Jurassic Park dinosaurs don't have feathers.
Well, I
like it.
I care much less about that whole debate than I do about the fact that the story was awful. It was terrible, and the characters specifically were really bad, and it was so transparent what they were trying to do with the scenes that they didn't draw me in at all. And yet,
spoilers,
it was still Star-Lord fighting dinosaurs, so I can't complain.
Thank you. I've not seen the goddamn film yet, but what I wanted from a really shitty multi-hundred-dollar million film was Star-Lord without the raccoon fighting goddamn dinosaurs, and apparently that's what I'm getting.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty much what you get.
When I put down my $5 at the weekend matinee, the budget weekend matinee, I am a father. We are going to have a good time. That's what I'm hearing right there.
Oh yeah, it was an enjoyable adventure, but I don't think it was nearly as good as the first one.
No, none of them are. That's
No.
the biggest problem with the Jurassic.
It was definitely
X.
better than 2 and 3. Let's start right there. It was
So it's
way
making
better
a
than 2 and
comeback.
3.
When they get Mr. Abrams to direct the next Jurassic Universe.
All right, let's get back on track. We got on
All right, so
dinosaurs and we're never going to stop. Welcome to
last but
Tales
not
of
least-
the Park.
Yeah, last but not least, Heroes of the Storm. A fantastic game. I can't recommend it enough. I know we've talked about it before. Gray is not here, Mr. Basinger. I know you'd rather have him than me, but he has had a series of setbacks in his personal life. I'm kidding, of course. No. No, but so Heroes of the Storm, great game. Well worth learning. I am a hair's breadth away from mastering Zagara. So those of you who
Which
have not
one is
mastered Zagara, that's the
the support one
Zerg.
that puts itself on your head?
No, you're thinking Abathur.
I am.
No, this is the Zerg that spreads the creep everywhere, and she is a great character because you spread that creep. There is no better hero in the game for finding vision. You run lane to lane, you lay down the creep, and as long as someone's not cognizant of where you put it, and you can play mind games with people on that, which is a ton of fun, I say. And you get massive vision for every lane in this Dota-style game. But more to the point, I have not had a game with her yet where I have not been the best assassin or the highest hero damage. Because you get Banelings, you get Zerglings, you get that goddamn Mutalisk, and then you get that Maw, and the Maw just swallows teams whole, and then you say, now, and everyone puts their ultimate down in the AoE that is affected by that Maw, and as soon as the Maw ends, they pop out and die. It's a great system. I suggest it to everyone.
That reminds me of Dawn of War 2, because I was very excited by that while I was playing it, and the Tyranids have a similar kind of, oh man, I love to watch things swarm on other things and then everything dies.
So, it's funny you mentioned that. Many years back when I was still in high school, just starting college, I ran a 40-player Necromunda league. And if you've never played Necromunda, it is a Games Workshop game. So right there, half of our audience is already tuned out. Back to the point. It's a tabletop game of gang warfare. And we had people from the military. We had a ton of people. But more importantly, we had a bunch of guys from Blizzard because they were in the area. I'm based in Orange County. They're out of Irvine, which is in Orange County. And they were also up in the northern part of the state at the time, but they were doing the Warcraft games down here, and they had just started StarCraft. And what they have wanted to do is they have wanted to license Games Workshop's Warhammer universe and their Warhammer 40k universe, and Games Workshop said no. So they actually made their own. That's why Tyranids looks so goddamn similar to the Zerg.
They built
why
it originally.
Space Marines are, yeah. But we had one of the guys who would just go on for hours while he's playing a Games Workshop game about how much he hated Games Workshop because they completely failed to realize how good Blizzard was. And oh my God, 20 years later, he's right. I still wish Games Workshop had licensed it to Blizzard because think of how good things like the Warhammer MMO would have been had Blizzard been in charge of it.
Oh man, it would have been so different. The world would have been crazy different. All right, now we're done. You weren't kidding when you said that there was a lot of stuff you've been doing recently. Tim, what have you been up to?
Far less. I've been doing hand-to-hand combat with reinstalling Windows over and over and over again.
Oh no!
For about the past 4 weeks now. It's been a crazy ride of different types of hardware failure and awesome troubleshooting.
Tim, Don't worry, you'll get to reinstall everything to Windows 10 in just a week or two.
That's the worst part. Is I'm so excited about Windows 10 in as far as you could be excited about an operating system. But I also have this weird fetish for user interfaces. So I see a new operating system and I'm like, oh my god, I want to get my hands all over that new taskbar. That's going to be amazing.
Ow.
It's not.
Ow.
A user interface is, yes, as Bridger, once again, sir, again, I thank you. Again, this episode brought to you by Absinthe. Absinthe, good for what ails you.
It's not actually brought to you by Absinthe.
It is. I am sponsoring this myself. I have bought 6 goddamn bottles. We're going to drink it to all of our chagrin. I will ship you one, Bridger. It has a monkey holding a skull on the bottle. What more do you want?
I want the monkey to not prey on
something that doesn't taste terrible.
Oh, there
no,
you go.
it's absinthe. It's awesome.
It's
All right, but
supposed
Tim,
to
more
taste
the point.
terrible. Don't you get it?
No. When you make it right, again, I'm making a necromancer.
No,
when
you
make
didn't
it right,
make it right. It's not green.
Wait. How is this not yellowish green and frankly disturbing?
All right, it's a little
That
green.
is Gatorade levels of
You
green.
know what? It's
people.
not disappearing into the background, so it's not green enough.
But Tim,
Little
I'm
green
saying
screen.
you have an
humor there for
opportunity
you
here.
guys.
You have an opportunity to install, say, Fedora Core, whatever the hell their most recent one is, and then just run wine. And make that your
or I
Windows
could
box.
not.
No, I'm saying you
that
should.
sounds like a much better option to me.
Yeah, but again, if you're really big into the science side of things, Linux has better tools. And I say that as someone who does not give one shit about how hard your life is going to be after you try this.
We use Linux on work computers if we're doing science processing, but if you want to play video games, native Windows is really where it's at.
It is absolutely better. Those of you at home who thought I was serious, go ahead. But I'm saying the rest of you who realized I wasn't, don't.
So anyway,
So apart from that, I've been mostly working on the fantastic project of going into schools around Australia and teaching children and teachers how to play Kerbal Space Program, which has been a phenomenally rewarding experience. It is one of the best teaching tools you can use in a modern day classroom. It is absolutely phenomenal.
You should write a letter and thank them for that paycheck, because if they had just put in a decent tutorial, then you wouldn't have had that.
Well, it's more than that, because I actually worked with the
Ow, I got my
I worked with the EDU
that's
group.
shots, people.
So the Kerbal EDU is slightly different from stock Kerbal. It has a couple of extra tools that allow you to do things like plot things like which forces are acting on the craft at any given time. So you can look
is
at
that
drag
a mod?
versus lift.
One of the Kerbal mods?
It's an
educational
mod?
version.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's also an educational version. It's a standalone game with a mod built into it.
Is it made or distributed by the main Kerbal Space Program developers?
Yep.
Ah.
Yep.
They support a ton of mods, actually.
Yeah. Way too many. Kind of like Skyrim. You know what? That's exactly. It's a really good comparison. There are so many things that you can bolt onto your Kerbal Space Program that you shouldn't. Most of them you shouldn't. There's like 2 or 3. It might be really useful, but you shouldn't. Anyway, I have been reading The Martian in preparation for the movie coming out soon, because I do want to science the shit out of this. And so far, I am. That was like they had me. When Matt Damon said I'm gonna have to science the shit out of this, I was like, I'm going to see it. I don't care. That's it. You wrote the line. That's the line that's captured my heart. So I'm about
Bridger,
yay
2016.
big, yay through it, like 2/3 of the way through it, thereabouts. And I have to say,
it is a truly phenomenal book.
It is. It's really good.
I've not read it. I actually intend to. I have to finish my barber's recommendation to me of The Emperor's Blades, which I've not tried and I've not read yet. He asked me, though, because I think he was tired of hearing my horse shit about fitness and cosmology. He asked me if I read any fiction, and then I brought out a bunch of things, the classics, like Ivanhoe or that kind of thing. And so he asked me finally, do I read sci-fi? And I said I do. And he suggested The Emperor's Blades. So for those of you out there, let me say Taylor from 1808 in Lake Forest, California, who is, of course, your guide on all things literature, suggests The Emperor's Blades, an excellent high fantasy book about assassins and anger.
Fair enough.
And, if you're going to be an assassin, you should be angry. If you're a nice assassin, you have problems, which is why you shouldn't read books about nice assassins. American Sniper aside.
So when you say The Emperor's Blades,
Yes.
I do a search. It comes up Chronicle of the Unhewn Throne.
You now know more than I do.
So that's the series name, right? So
Yes.
I think to myself, he must have gone to the discount throne store because the Iron Throne in Game of Thrones just rolls off the tongue. Like, there you go.
It does.
You want a name for
Although-
your throne in your fictional series? Bam, that's your premium name right there. George
It
R. R.
is.
Martin paid top dollar. He's like, I don't have money for a really good name for a book. I'm just going to take one off this shelf. What's this? Unhewn throne? Nobody's used that? All right, good. That's mine. What's that? 50 cents? I'll take it.
That said, I think given, minus where Tim is at, because he's not necessarily representative of most of the Western world, I think the image I sent you is the appropriate image for this show. Summer is coming.
For those of you playing the home game, we see the head of, what's his name? The one that everybody hates. Joffrey Baratheon. Photoshopped onto somebody who has a throne made out of pool noodles. Presiding over said pool. It is well done humor.
Yeah, I don't think I can trust him to give me a shave, but as far as haircuts go, I'm saying good enough.
All right, when you shared that, your screen got all tiny.
I will now unshare it, and behold my giant head.
It has not returned.
Nope, still tiny.
I'm just
all right, well,
I'm just gonna click and
complaints
drag.
about my prowess aside.
Close enough. Maybe it'll come back. All right, so I have been reading The Martian, and it is a good book so far. I really enjoy it. The main character that does get stuck on Mars, spoilers, he has a great sense of humor, and that's what kind of keeps him alive while he's trying to survive long enough to get rescued, and that, I think, makes the book what it is. And definitely recommended so far. Again, I'm 2/3 the way through it. If it terribly disappoints me at the end, I'll tell you about it next time. All right. Now that we got all that out of the way, it's time to end the show. Have a good night, everybody.
See you guys.
Star Citizen. Still nothing to talk about Star Citizen-wise, so that's all we're doing. It's game over.
I think people tune into us for the banter. If they want Star Citizen news, they can go to robertSpaceIndustries.com and see a complete dearth of updates.
Yes. Well, that's not quite true. That's why we're having the show here tonight. And,
Touché.
okay, I'm going to try to straighten out my neck for a while. There we go. So we did have a little bit of feedback. Krell on the RSI forum sent me a message. He said, quote, "Hey, just got a chance to listen to number 28, and I have 1 point for you with regards to the whole controller brouhaha that you may not have considered." Aside here, brouhaha, fantastic word. Not enough people turn that into, like, I don't think I've ever seen it written out. He literally wrote BROUHAHA. And I don't even know if that's correct. I would have written it like brew, like beer, like BREW.
No, that's the correct spelling.
Right. He has it done correctly, straight out of.
That is very impressive. He probably Googled it. I would have Googled it.
Well done, sir.
Anyway, he says, quote, "Yes, it's not balanced, and yes, it's far too early to be worrying about it. However, if what is required to balance it is a major change to existing functionality, for example, removing the ability of mouse to control both flight and aim, probably the number one issue that on the stick side the longer it remains in the game, the harder it will be to remove, and the bigger the explosion, angst, rage, and tears will be. It's much easier to give features than to remove them. Good episode. Looking forward to the next one. Smiley face." Unquote.
I'm
Thank you,
call BS
Krell.
on the comment.
All right.
Let's start with that.
Thank you, Krell. We're now going to assassinate your comment.
We're going to call BS on it. You said good show. Sir, if I have any say in things, these are never good shows.
Hence the absinthe. Ow. And my neck, apparently. Now, I do take issue. He says the longer that the feature remains in the game, the harder it will be to remove it. I would agree if we were in a later stage of development and they were building things on top of the existing framework, they were building the control system, they were balancing the game around the control system, right? If they were currently working hard to balance everything and that was like their main goal right now, then that I would agree, that would make things worse, because then when you change the control thing, they have to go back and redo all that work. I don't think that is their focus.
You're saying you'll forgive it now, but not when they get ready for the first expansion pack, Star Citizen 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Exactly. Revenge of the Phase.
Good. All right.
The thing, what I'm trying to point out is right now, their coders, with regards to Arena Commander, as far as I know, they're working on the back end, the netcode issues and the matchmaking functionality and things like that. We're going to talk about that more in a second. But they're also working on implementing the new damage model, which is going to be based on actual physical physics engine rather than just, okay,
Yes.
this thing hit this thing and it does this much damage to this armor or what have you. So until that damage system gets implemented, that's what their programmers are working on if they're doing any updates to Arena Commander. So once they get that in, then they'll try to get other features in that aren't in the game yet. And once they have everything in the game in a working state, then they can go back and do a pass on the controllers and decide what's working and what's not. Because going back and changing that when they don't even have the rest of the game in is also doubling their work.
So for those of you at home, they're going for more of the World of Tanks style damage. Or wait, the World of War Thunder Ground Forces style of damage modeling than the World of Tanks style damage modeling. And again, 5 shots, Bridger has once again hurt his neck at a thought that I had.
Look how I suffer to bring you this podcast.
He has to get past his co-host to give you anything useful.
Send me money for aspirin.
Send me money.
If you don't send me money for aspirin, I can't do the show.
I'll send you aspirin, or at least I'll go to Silk Road, find an FBI agent to go to your house, who will then give you drugs. You will take them and be arrested, and then we won't have a second show. Or in 28 show. Whatever the hell we're on now.
Jiro in the chat said, he's not correct. Removing features are easier. Source, am a game programmer. It's true. It's true. You could just take them out. But I think what Krell meant is that removing them when they've been in there for a long time and people have gotten used to them is a bigger PR issue than if you put them in and take them out in the next patch. And I definitely agree with him from that point of view.
I agree with him from that point of view as well, but not from the state that we're in. We are still massively early access. I mean, we talked about early access games before. I mentioned Ark Survival. A game so early in access, you shouldn't consider it a game yet, more of a technical beta or a technical demonstration. People will argue with me about that. It doesn't matter. The point is, we're very, very, very early access on this one. We don't have a continuous private or persistent universe yet. And yet, we expect from these developers a fully finished game already. Taking away features at this point should be par for the course. They should be removing things. I think they should be taking guns out entirely. When the whole swarm missile system was a problem, and is a problem, let's be honest, they should have pulled that gun from the possible loadouts just to get better test data from us. And if people bitched about it, fuck them. Okay, I might be a little more hardcore about hurting the fans, but I'm saying if you go into an early access game like this and you say to yourself, I'm going to kick some ass with this missile that I know is overpowered, you're not really testing the game. You're just trying to get that electronic penis a little bit bigger. And I have bad news for you. You can't woo the ladies with an E-peen.
Oh, well, that's disappointing.
It is, I know.
Not even the nerd ladies? Anyway, so yeah, Tim, what's your thoughts on this issue? Do you think it would be to their credit to address the controller issue sooner rather than later? Does it make a big deal?
Yeah, no.
You want to expand on that, or you're just gonna let it hang like there?
Compared to Kelly's, incredibly in-depth responses, I'm just gonna go with the super,
thank you,
just succinct, abrupt. Just no. I mean, it's so difficult to program in features or to balance features. Not necessarily in a video game, even just in any software-based system. And as soon as people start saying, because you can extrapolate this exact same argument out to a professional field, like when we're working in science, and you've got some either supervisor or client or other scientists somewhere else in the world, and they're saying, hey, the data set you've released is really cool, but what I would really like to be able to do is to sort the data by how, the intensity of the second peak rather than the first peak. And you're like, all right, well, that's a cool thing that you want to be able to do. It's not particularly useful for what I'm doing, and it's my data, so I'm not going to spend the next week working on that so that you can do something a little bit easier. I'm going to do the things that are important to me now, and when we get to a point where that other data might be important, then we can address, different sorting mechanisms. So you really need to prioritize what's going on with your development with these kind of software systems, and especially in a game like this, if people get used to one control scheme and then it changes, deal with it. Like just fucking deal with it.
That's the right answer. Deal with it. Fucking deal with it. 2015.
Well, then. Okay. Okay, so that all having been said, let's move on. New homework, by the way. You thought you guys were going to get off scot-free, but no. There's new homework this week because we're talking about a human perspective. The new homework is Orbital Supermax. This is one I actually have not read before.
I have read it. It's an excellent story. My favorite of the entire series of fiction in universe so far.
All right, so Orbital Supermax will be the next story that we talk about when we're waiting for something to happen in Star Citizen Land.
If you read the story, I suggest you put on any music by Tool, especially anything from the Sober album.
Okay.
Just a little clarification for Obscure Hero in the chat as well. I would just share the data, but in that specific case, it was 14 petabytes.
Whoa!
So I'm saying
that is
X-ray
hardcore.
Telescope?
Even sending hard disks to the person is not like no.
And this is
I don't
we're
want to do
talking
that.
Australian internet. That would literally take decades.
Richard, you have forgotten an important truism in the world of big data. Never underestimate the throughput of FedEx.
Yes, well, indeed.
Yeah, I mean, we literally transport data by putting it in suitcases.
Yes.
Suitcase.
I have been there. I have done that. It's not necessarily fun, especially when the FBI asks why you have 24 fucking hard disks in your suitcase, and you say, because.
No one asks us anything.
Well, okay, you're in Australia. You don't have.
We put it on the plane and they're like, all right.
That feels heavy. Oh, well. Anyway, moving on. I do want to point out that Vin, also known as White Snake in the forums, has put together a nice page, or has had a page put together on his behalf for the Legacy instructional series on the Imperial News Network, which is doing a great job putting together the news for Star Citizen. And you can find a link to this in the show notes. It's imperialnews.network/LIS for Legacy instructional series. Definitely check that out if you would like some help learning how to fly in the current Arena Commander.
I can unreservedly say it's an excellent series.
It is. So let's talk about the two kind of big things that have happened in recent history here with Star Citizen. We've got the design of the civilian passenger transport as well as the Genesis Starliner articles came up.
See, you say Genesis Starliner, I say Phoenix Mark II.
No, not the Origin 890 Jump Mark II.
Fair enough.
I have to say, I was not expecting civilian passenger transport to be something that got its own design article that explained how they were going to gamify it.
But I was. And that's because I really enjoyed...
That's because I'm a sentient god.
Well, there's that. But I really enjoyed the X3 series, X3 Albion, X3 Terran Conflict, and they had a massive game built around civilian transport, taking CEOs from one system through two war zones where you're dodging goddamn missiles, hoping like hell you're not shot down, to get this massive payoff at the end because they're CEOs and they're going to give you a ridiculous amount of money for the early game. So that's why I was expecting them to come out with something very similar to this, where they had a great system of kind of NPC taxi missions or PC taxi missions. I mean, they haven't gone hugely into depth on this yet, but I kind of foresaw.
Are you kidding me?
this.
They put a whole thing on here.
like
you're gonna have
three documents.
Yeah, you have to go in here and you use this information control system to for some. By the way, in order to make this a game that you actually had to do something on, like your ship is gonna fall apart like every single time you fly. Like, oh man, passenger in seat 3C is reporting that his entertainment system is on the fritz again. Guess we're gonna have to throw it out. Didn't we just replace that one in the last flight? Yep. Why don't we buy a more reliable system? There aren't any.
Delta Simulator Mark III. All right, fair enough.
It is a cartel. All in-flight information and entertainment systems are produced by a single conglomerate, and no one else is allowed to get into the market. And so they create the shittiest things that you'll just have to buy and replace. They're consumable. Like, okay, we stocked up on food and water and liquor, and we've got another
and server blades.
And server blades.
All right, but all that said, this is really the logical extension to what X3 has been doing for a long time now, and it's a much better game.
But is it really?
It looks interesting.
Is it really? It's like press the button when it lights up. Like that's what this is. I mean,
I'm gonna argue with it'll be a little more difficult than press the button when it lights up, which is still more of a involved game than what was the passenger system in X3, which is what they're, in my opinion, basing it on. And it is entirely my opinion. They haven't said
if you can
that,
kind
we
of
saw X3, we wanted to add to it.
I really enjoyed X2. Like that was one of the really, really big space games that I played for a huge long time, especially with some of the mods that were available for at the time as well. But I really felt like some of the things they did in X3 just really kind of took away from the immersion aspect. Like, and even the passenger system I found, I got so frustrated with it. I was like, oh god, please, not another goddamn courier mission. And I want to ferry some stuck-up asshole across the galaxy as he starts bickering and bitching about what's not being done correctly.
Here's the good news I think we should all enjoy. The good news is that if in X3, if you failed a passenger mission, like you couldn't get in there in time, what you could do was sell that asshole into slavery.
You're not ruining my reputation. Cut off all access to the spectrum.
No one will ever know.
1,000 credits for you, and that's the end of it.
But I guess, I mean, ultimately, it comes down to the fact that
we have a number of reports that airliner flown by XX Sniper X is returning with not enough passengers on a fairly regular basis.
XX Sniper X is too busy shooting pirates or Kilrathi or other players. No, this is Cool Dude 420.
You're right. That would be Cool Dude 420. And then, of course, if the server blades are unreliable, the Mixmaster is so much more manual than even we have today. I'm pretty sure they've got cocktail machines where you can say, I want a this or I want a that, and it will mix the drink for you better than a bartender. And yet here you're like, I have to press this button for exactly the right amount of time to get this asshole his special drink.
And you know why? It's because of the interference by unions.
Yes. They demanded that no one ever make a good mixing
The
computer.
mixology union's like, no, we refuse to let you make a machine that can mix a cocktail by itself. It's not humane. It's not right.
Server union has had a
flies in the face of God.
I would have gone more for the Dune reference. You know, after the whole war against artificial intelligence, they couldn't have anything but a human bartender. And, you know, to be a bartender in space, you have to have like a 70 IQ. So therefore, you go with, Mixmaster Tim. And
But after showing you how they're going to gamify all this stuff, after that they say, and by the way, we know you'll think this is pretty boring, so you can hire some NPCs to do this for you, which is essentially the same as putting them on computer pilot in the first place.
And is exactly the argument they had for the cargo system, which was, we have this great system of cargo. You can play motherfucking Tetris with your ship, but you can hire an NPC who will automatically do it for you and problem solve.
Yes and no, because even I agree, but the cargo system way more excites me. Like I look at the cargo Tetris and I'm like, oh man,
let's use the correct system name, Grabby Hands. Grabby Hands.
The cargo system way more excites than the bartending system. I actually don't blame you. I'm actually more excited about the cargo system as well.
You know, Gray in the chat said they're like DVD players. Average lifetime, half a movie. And he's right. But he wrote DVD, capital D, lowercase v, capital D, and my mind read that as D and D players. And I'm like, average lifetime of D&D players? What is he talking about? Capitalize your letters properly, man.
Sex life, not, like lifespan. I think you can agree with that, Bridger.
Oh, okay, yeah. That'll work. So anyway, so this is certainly a lot more to it than just like picking up the passengers and then just flying them somewhere else. There was a piece in here that discussed how prices are set, and that kind of suggests that people that can afford, I mean, they did a good description of, the people that can afford the really high-end equipment and the bigger ships that are more efficient can do the more profitable routes on the very demanding systems because they'll be able to do it cheapest and still make some kind of a profit. And it sort of occurred to me, I mean, there's going to be NPCs doing this as well, right? And that's going to guarantee a sort of a floor. Or ceiling, I guess. I guess maybe depend on the demand.
It'll give you both, really.
Yeah, it's an artificial constraint on the high end and the low end of the market.
But I wonder, are players going to be taking these flights? Are you going to be able to trash somebody's reputation? Be like, the drink was terrible. I never got my towels, and I'm pretty sure I saw a cockroach. A space cockroach. Honestly, he had a little helmet and everything.
Honestly, I expect two things out of this. One, that I will, with my Phoenix, be ferrying some jackass CEO from System A to System B and fighting pirates to do so. And two, that I will never ferry an actual player from point A to point B because they have better shit to do.
Oh, but you forget when people get shot out of the sky and they don't have a ship where they get resurrected, and then they want to fly to the place where their base is.
I don't foresee that as being a gameplay element that survives the early access.
Okay.
Hungry? Why not treat yourself to an authentic taste of Earth?
That's 7 shots, people. Ow, ow, counts as 2.
Yeah. It does have one gimbal mount, size 5. What is it going to do with that? Where is it located? I don't even see it on here.
On the very back tip of the wing.
Asteroid defense.
Asteroid defense, sure. The back tip of the wing.
Yeah, like on the tail fin.
You know what? It could be a sonic weapon. I know modern cruise ships around Africa have...
I'm going to stop you there and say that sonic weapons in space, not a good idea.
I'm not arguing with that. I'm going to say, okay, here we go. Metallic resonance weapon. There we go. If your whole hull resonates with whatever the fuck it is, unobtainium beam they're shooting at the ship and causes it to vibrate, you're going to stop.
I don't see a gun.
Yeah.
It's a retractable turret. It's in one of the diagrams.
Yeah, but so the whole point of it is to cause you to say, maybe attacking the cruise ship, bad call. Now, in the modern world, we have weapons like that. On actual cruise ships, going around Cape Horn, they'll aim it at these Zodiac, rafts at pirates that have RPGs and machine guns, and say, okay, we're going to deter them from taking over a cruise ship by just blasting their goddamn eardrums. And, to their credit, it works because
listen,
when your eardrums
you're
are
in
punctured,
international water. You could hook up a 50 caliber machine gun and just kill them.
But we're not going.
But
to
I guess
do
there's
that
psychological
because
consequences to doing that.
At Princess Cruise Lines,
just because you're in international waters, you can't kill people, Bridger.
What are you talking about? There's no jurisdiction there.
The UN.
Yes, there is. There's international law.
Yeah, but who is this international, and when are they going to send the international police?
Okay, so as an American,
it was called the Geneva Convention.
As an American, I'm going to say the international law is my law. No, I'm kidding, of course, people. But yeah, so the UN has a whole set of rules about passenger ships in international waters, and so they deter pirates by using sonic weapons to get them away. I'm saying the size 5 turret on the cruise ship here is going to be the UN equivalent to the sonic weapon. Although, again, Tim, you're right. Sonic weapons in space, bad call. That's not going to work well.
The other thing they use on cruise ships is they also use water cannons because they can literally just pump it from the water around them. But again, that doesn't work in space because if you try and pump space at people...
Actually, wait. No. A water cannon could work in space. Follow my logic. I'm shooting a jet of finely crystallized water into space. You're moving at, say, 2/10 the speed of light, and you hit all of my water crystals. What happens to your ship? It detonates.
No, yeah.
Yeah, but keep in mind
down,
when you're
sir.
shooting water, that's a form of thrust. You're gonna go in the opposite direction.
I have no
It's
problem
like-
with that either.
There's, you know the Three Stooges problem where like there's too many things to get through the door. When there are too many problems with an argument, sometimes my brain just shuts down. I'm like, I don't know where to start first.
That's a great way to point that. But I'm saying a field of ice crystals will at least deter the misses.
Okay. I'm okay. So, back to the real question at hand. Are either of you interested in picking up one of these things?
If I had the money, absolutely. I think it looks like a
God.
beautiful ship.
If I had unlimited funds, I'd buy them all. But I have a Phoenix because I upgrade the Constellation because Absinthe is good for what ails you. So with the Phoenix, I'm going to go with whatever missions they offer to Phoenix pilots.
All right. Now, let's move on out to the letter from the chairman.
8.
Yeah.
8 shots.
So this had some disappointing news in it, and it's, we're not.
See,
getting
I
to
disagree.
start.
I disagree with that. The very premise of that statement. I read this letter for the chairman, and I was like,
"That's
fantastic."
If you were hoping that the first news you were going to hear about Star Marine is, hey, it's out, and then you see the letter from the chairman and they go, yeah, we have no ETA. You were like, oh, that's disappointing. Overall, I agree with you. It's not bad. It's not bad. He talks about how well the motion capture and the directing and everything went for Squadron 42, and that's basically done for now.
Which is awesome. Totally awesome.
It is.
Let me stop you there for a second. It means we might actually see the first couple episodes of Squadron 42 in 2015.
Yeah.
That's fucking fantastic.
Of course, some people would argue that the control system is going to need to be fixed by then.
Separate issue, goddammit. It's single player. Whatever the control system is, doesn't matter.
That's kind of true. Kind of true. And it's a beta of Squadron 42.
Yes.
I might not even play it unless I feel comfortable with the control system, just so that I can enjoy. Ooh, who am I carrying? I'm going to play it. I'm going to play it because I want to find out what happens. All right. So, the other things that we have happening here is they discuss the two questions. What issues are the FPS team facing, and what do the issues mean for the rest of the project, and what's next? And so there's a couple of things here. Obviously, they are having problems, and they have mentioned this as well on Around the Verse and Reverse the Verse. They're having problems with the netcode. And I've seen people point out, I said that the netcode for Far Cry Engine is terrible. Anybody who played MechWarrior Online knows that the terrible netcode is what caused that game to die, and they shouldn't have never used this engine. You know what? They were going to rewrite whatever engine they were using because this has never been done before. The whole game that they're trying to build has never been done before. There isn't an engine that they could license that would work for this. They have to rewrite everything except the graphics engine, and even then they rewrote it to use the what's that new rendering style with the light bouncing off of things?
The PBR.
PBR. Yeah. Yes, the physics-based rendering. I mean, that was probably a patch on top of it, but you get the idea.
Yeah, I mean the concept of complaining about using the CryEngine because of the way CryEngine handles networking. The CryEngine doesn't handle networking. That's the whole point. Like the CryEngine is nothing to do with the networking. The multiplayer client in Crisis or the multiplayer client in MechWarrior, that's not the CryEngine. That's not what you're talking about. A completely different thing.
Yeah.
It's like complaining about I don't like that car because that car works on the wrong petrol. And like, well, that's not. No, that's a bad analogy. I don't know where I'm going with that one. It's too early. I can't deal with this. But the point is that the CryEngine is not the networking client. That's the netcode and the CryEngine are two separate things. But what they have been talking about in the letter for the chairman is that the way they're going about building the netcode, like the actual basics of the networking system, is phenomenal.
Yes.
The theory and the structure in which they're building it is exactly how it should be done.
Yes.
And I read through it and I was like, I did not like I had any lack of faith to begin with, but I have so much more faith now that they could possibly make this feel really, really solid in terms of an online experience.
Oh yeah, I read through that section and it was all like, oh, is that, well, what does that mean? And that's cool, I think. What the heck are they talking about here?
See, and I've actually written network code, everything from a ground station to a satellite, and yes, that was in Australia, to cell phone to cell phone communications and everything over local network systems. And they've done a great job of describing their problems, and they're absolutely correct. And they're going about it the right way, which means the way I would do it.
What I'm trying to understand is it seems like the problem that they were describing and the solution that they came up with at this generic interface instance manager, specifically is just about creating new servers when there's a patch or something. Is that what, am I getting that right?
I wouldn't say just a patch or something, but more about when they see a great deal of load on any given system resource. So I'm going to make up some numbers here, but if all of your systems are running at 70% utilization, that means that they'll probably spin up 5 more systems or 8 or 10 just to get it down to 50% utilization across the board. Which again may be colored by my own interpretation, but that's how I would do it. You want to have about 100% availability of resources.
Are they using like ginormous PNGs here? Because I feel like I'm on dial-up again. What is this?
That looks like Australian internet to me.
I don't understand. Is my wife upstairs like downloading a movie, or what is the deal here? This is weird.
She might be. You may want to talk to her about her usage of the internet, especially for any adult-related content. But that's
like,
okay.
I like that you guys laughed, but that wasn't a joke.
I know.
Yeah.
You've got
that genuinely looks like, when I load up the RSI website, that's what it looks like for me.
All right, I'm gonna try to figure out how big this is. I don't understand why it's taking 3 freaking years to download.
So the Australia internet joke is they have one provider that does all of the backbone between not Australia.
It's
and
15
the rest of the
megabytes. Why is their image 15 megabytes? Like, we want to make sure the chairman looks really good, guys. He looks really good.
You need to be able to see Chris's paws.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
See,
I've
that one
always
came up in
wanted
2
to
seconds
see
because it's
and
probably
count.
500K. All right. Anyway,
Wow.
we got totally distracted. People that are
impressive.
listening to this audio going, I don't get it. Why is it loading slow? What's the joke here?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's loading slow. It's 1990s. I saw a girl I liked and searched her on the internet.
Yeah, sure. What? Anyway, back to this generic interface management, instance management thing. It sounds like this is going to be helping them a lot. And they are going to be doing... Holy crap, it's 8 o'clock. We didn't even get to human perspective. Anyway, they are working on it, and we'll get it when we get it. And it was supposed to come out in April, and they know that it's been 2 months, and they still don't have an ETA, which is good, because if they'd given an ETA and missed it, the internet would flip a shit. So I'm glad they did not give one. But the fact they did not give one means they don't even think that they are anywhere close.
The internet has already flipped its shit. Let's be clear.
Oh, come on.
Especially for the internet, they have an infinite number of shits to flip. So
that's true. So it's not hard. But they were expecting a Star Citizen or a Star Marine release last week, and then this week not having one has led to a great deal of concern.
Oh,
So,
I see
yeah.
what you did there. So, anyway, they've been also trying to, they got the Phoenix dynamic environment system. That's what I was talking about, where they'd spin up new instances and things like that. And the benefits of dynamic creation and blah, 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 blah. Now, the good news is that they've been tweaking and improving the gameplay while all this other stuff is going on in the background. So they're fixing animation problems and things like that, so that hopefully when we play the game, we're not just going to be laughing at some guy like sliding across the floor. I mean, that's probably still going to happen, but it'll happen less often, I guess. And we'll also... we also got a little piece here that says, oh, well, because we've hit this snag, how does that affect everything else? And it's like, yeah, it's only 15% of the teams working on Star Marine. Yeah, but I have a feeling that Squadron 42 is going to have a decent FPS component, so any of those episodes are probably getting delayed.
Yeah.
Well,
Including the
yes and no,
multi-crew
because
stuff.
most of the problems with the FPS is not like it's to do with the mechanics of the FPS, but the creation of the Squadron 42 stuff is just asset creation.
You're right.
Like, there's
You're right.
huge amounts of asset creation, and that can be done. That is done by different people. Like they are completely separate departments within CIG.
Or they
And
should
asset
be.
creation just takes so long. People don't realize how long it takes to create just one level. Just one level in
Tell
a
that
game.
to id Software.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys saw the new Doom announcement. They're like, oh yeah, we got the snap thing. You can make a map in like 10 seconds. It looks very
Yeah.
impressive. I'm not sure.
But creating the snap thing takes time. Like you need
absolutely.
to create the assets for the procedural map creator. You still need to create the assets for that. They don't just pop out of the ether.
Sure.
There's a reason why the ZN Car2 Owl is making more and more rounds, and I think it's because they're going to use it in this first episode of Squadron 42.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
What was it? There was an XKCD on how long it takes to, like, that you spend optimizing a system and how much of a benefit you get, how long it takes you to do that task. It's like a chart. Like, if you spend 6 minutes of this normal task once a day, then you should spend 3 hours optimizing it to get a return on your investment in the next year or something like that. It's kind of this ridiculous... Anyway, there's an XKCD for everything. So, what's next is we're just going to wait and hear more about the Star Marine as they get further into it.
Yes.
And now they wanted to end by saying that they pledge. Did you see this thing, the pledge that they put up recently?
It's not
redoing the pledge.
Yeah, this is the original article, more or less, that they put out around the Kickstarter campaign or slightly after. So we've seen it for the last couple of years.
Yeah, they just wanted to re-pledge themselves to you.
Yeah, they just wanted to lay it out there again and say, hey, you know what? This is what we're giving you. If you need more than that, then maybe early access isn't for you.
I found it. Is it worth the time? xkcd.com/1205. All right. So, nothing too terribly surprising in this, I don't think. And we'll be looking forward to hearing more about it, hopefully soonish. All right. Are we ready to go on to talk about a human perspective?
I mean, if you insist. I mean, it was the purpose of the show. We could let it go about nothing of any material.
No, we can do it. It's not
okay. All right.
It's good. We won't go through like chapter by chapter like we have in the past. I don't think it's necessary. But let's talk about it in general. Why did it do that? Damn you, formatting. Okay. So there's just some couple notes that I had while I was reading through. And by the way, a human perspective. So spoilers, if anybody wants to read it, go read it. It's an in-fiction universe story set in the Star Citizen universe. And
just to add some weight to it, my personal favorite.
I thought you just said the Orbital Supermax was your personal favorite.
They're
you can't have personal favorites. No, you can't have two
personal favorites.
Okay, just you though. Nobody else.
It's like children. You can't love them both equally.
You know, I'm about to have a second child, so
it's a good thing these stories aren't sentient then, I guess. Anyway, the basic story of a human perspective is they introduce this guy that you're reading the story through his head, through his eyes, and He is somebody who doesn't really get along well with other people. He's very antisocial, but he gets along well with the Banu, and he does a lot of jobs in Banu space, and he hasn't been back to human space in a long time, and he gets a job from somebody he's done the job for before, and this is like a go-between, a Banu go-between that tries to set up meetings and things like that, and so the guy, whose name is Charles, which is interesting. It's like Charles, but then it got lost in translation somewhere.
Missed. Yeah.
Charles.
In my head, I pronounced that as Carl.
It might be Carl, with
Yeah,
just a
I could
CH for some reason. All right, let's go with Carl because it's easier. So Carl,
the non-traditional spelling.
yeah, goes to this meeting, and he has done other jobs like this where he's trying out some new food that the Banu think might work well in human space, and the human corporations might want to import it and make a killing selling it as some kind of exotic luxury good. And so he is basically signed up for this, but there's things a little weird, a little bit shady. Things happen really fast, and then it turns out he's going to be working with this biologist woman named Angela, and she is going to help him find out if these new animals, which are kind of like small cows, sort of. I imagine them like small woolly cows, and whether they're good for pets or good for eating, and that's what he's supposed to go find out. And he
Don't we already have a small woolly cow? Is that a sheep?
Yeah, I guess we do. So he goes down to a planet with Angela, and they spend some time trying to figure out if these cows are worth it. And then it turns out that, oh, wait, she's an android the whole time. And the real test is whether or not he would notice that she was not human. And once he notices, they bring him up and put him in a sort of orbital facility where they simply ask him questions like, when did you suspect? What did you realize? Was she acting like a normal human? And like ask him all these uncomfortable questions. And then finally he roots around in the computer system to read through the data that they're collecting from him. And they take that as a breach of contract, which allows them to scrape his brain out. Well, copy his brain out, I guess, and make him into an android, or make an android copy of him, rather. And then he breaks out of the facility, saves the real Angela, and they all live happily ever after.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's about it. So
you've captured it. It's
that's a synopsis.
well done. That is a good synopsis.
So, some things that pointed out. I love the syntax and the use of verbiage that they had in this story that the Banu got wrong, right? It felt very alien whenever they would do anything that was talking.
It's like someone from the Western world trying to figure out someone who's not from the Western world. And you're like, I see all the words and I know them, but not in that order.
Yeah. Just to give an example for those who haven't read it. Charles Grisham, your acquaintance is requested. It is my request that your acquaintance be made for another time. That is, again, I am requesting a renewed acquaintance with Carl Grisham. He just says it 6 times. And then he says, an acquaintance renewal is desirable to me, Lash 2.
I really like the way that they are very, they're formal in the way that, they want to be... Because the whole kind of point about the story is giving you an idea of how the Banu... sort of are as a species. And I like that idea that they're a kind of a mercantile species. They're very big on the whole trading and not offending someone and making sure that contracts and that deals and that jobs are done properly. So their speech really does tend to reinforce that. It sort of says...
It sounds a little bit like legalese, doesn't it?
Exactly.
They wind up saying the same thing 3 times to ensure clarity.
Yeah, exactly. And I felt like that felt genuine to me.
Not only do I want to renew your acquaintance, but I want your acquaintance to be renewed.
Yes. And it is desirable to me, Lash 2, Lish 2. Together, for profit, will be this new acquaintance. Mutual profit for services in this new acquaintance. And the whole time, he's using acquaintance when he should use meeting. And that's just the icing on the cake there with how well that felt just weird and alien.
They missed that slight kind of emphasis on one meaning than the other of the word acquaintance. Yeah,
exactly. So I definitely like that. I liked the character that they made this Charles guy out to be. He was very interesting, I thought.
Yes and no. I always figured he should be more Kotaku if he's going to be that awkward. He's a human being who doesn't like other human beings, so he should be much more awkward with the follow-on character of the woman.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to.
In fact, he doesn't realize
that
that she's an android specifically because he spent so long away from people. He's like, oh, she's just a little weird.
And on that point, to me, I think they could have had a better story, or maybe I'm just wrong, if she had been a totally brainwashed human being. Like they had gone through and done some mental reprogramming, full Scientology, not to upset the Scientologists. Now this is where Bridger gets sued.
Since when do we care about Scientology?
I was going to say, we can upset them. I'm not worried about that, honestly.
You can, but they're going to sue you, Bridger.
Bridger is an entity that doesn't exist. I can hide behind the pseudonym. They don't see my face. Oh, wait.
They've gone full brainwashing on this woman. That was my thought initially, and then she was an android, and I thought, okay, I can accept that. I can suspend the disbelief. And those of you who've watched these book reviews before, my suspension of disbelief is minimal at best.
It's important to you.
Yeah. So they actually managed to suspend disbelief, but I thought she was brainwashed initially. So that was kind of a well-done android look at things.
Yeah, my initial thought was that she was just trying to deceive him, that she was like some... I mean, there was obviously something else going on the whole time.
You thought it was more like corporate espionage kind of a thing.
Yeah, or like they were trying to get him to, I don't know, like bring out some other thing that they weren't allowed to do or something.
Some other agenda was clearly...
Yeah. But when it turned out that as soon as there was the scene where she didn't have the mask on, and I was like, all right, okay, so she's an android. I get where this is going.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, hang on, I'm pretty sure we did have the big story about how androids aren't feasible in the Star Citizen universe. That's why we don't have
AIs.
Well,
it's not feasible. It's that they don't trust them. Like, let's not...
Yeah, well, but I kind of like that by the end of it. Like, the Banu, which, for all intents and purposes, do seem like a superiorly technological race than the humans, even they can't really do AIs particularly well by the looks of things. Like, by the end of it, the androids don't really seem to work very well. They get thrown by every time they're put in a situation that they don't really know how to respond, or if they think they're missing the subtext, they kind of just shut down or reboot. And they point out, like, if you don't have the marionette team nearby, they don't work for more than 10, 15 minutes on their own.
So the other note that I thought was... Oh, sorry, go ahead. Finish it up.
No, I was just going to say, so it's good that they reinforce that they don't work. That's why we don't have them in the game.
Right. And this is actually like a splinter cell of a rogue section of the government that wanted to research Android. Like the actual Banu government declined this research and they went and did it anyway, it seems like is the case. The other thing that I thought was a great little touch is that the Banu, like he had to shave before he went to see the Banu because they don't trust anyone whose mouth they cannot see. Well, that's such a weird quirk that might just be an alien quirk.
Yeah, so I mean, either they're Banu or they're a TV producer.
Yeah. Or they hate beards. That's what I'm getting from this.
Linux programmers beware. Heyo. So
if you've got a beard, if you've gone full ZZ Top, the Banu won't trust you.
But that sounds like something that a human would do. Like if you were writing a book about humans meeting aliens and the aliens had to do something special, like a human likes to, usually you'd hear humans say something like, I want to look somebody in the eye when I talk to them so I can read their emotions. Like they just happen to say, oh, I want to see their mouth move. That way I'll know whether they're trepidatious, or it could be the Banu have, cues in how they, move their mouth to form words or after or before they speak that implies certain things. So that's interesting.
But
as well, you said that at the end they point out that this is kind of a rogue sect of the Banu. This is not typical Banu behavior in terms of stealing people and scraping their brains. But I feel like they really should have made a point of that more often throughout the story, especially at the halfway point where things are obviously not going well for Carl.
Yeah.
I feel like he should have been making more of an effort to reinforce to the reader that this doesn't seem right because I've spent the last 15 years in Banu space, and this is not how the Banu behave. Like, this is weird behavior from them. They're not evil, megalomaniac, and they do point out at one point, it's like, oh, it's weird that they would lie to me because the Banu hate lying. But they don't really go into that as deeply as I would have liked. Like, I feel like they kind of vilified the Banu a little in the story.
A little bit. Sorry, go ahead, Callie.
Let's say, but as vilification goes, we already know this is a small group of Banu. I mean, we could liken this to a militia group in the U.S. or I have no other actual analog outside of the U.S. So these are one tiny group of people, a think tank, if you will, in the Banu government or society that wants to make this human-android analog. And that's why they're vilified, is they're not just different, but their motives are not necessarily pure or good. So they're trying to find a way to lie in a way that isn't the Banu we don't lie line. And making this artificial being that can lie for them is kind of like the goal.
I like how Lishtu finally figured out how to say what he meant to say. Carl Grisham explaining, apologies, Carl Grisham, acquaintance misrepresented purposefully. And then he finally says, misrepresented acquaintance purposefully. Lishtu lied to Carl Grisham. Apologies.
We don't want to lie, but we're going to lie to you specifically, Carl Grisham.
I was a little upset that Lishtu kind of like, I don't know, at the end, because he disappears and he's like, oh, well, that's, maybe he wasn't involved. I would have liked confirmation in the story that Lishtu wasn't involved, because I kind of felt bad. Like, I was like, oh man, Lishtu, why are you going to lie? Yeah. Why are you going to feel like that?
You were doing so well, and then...
I thought we were friends, man.
They did point out that it seemed like, as you mentioned before, these guys, because they have this mercantilist tradition and contracts are super important and deceiving people is very distressing to them, to their psyche kind of, they had to set up this thing so that even though there's a rogue sect and they could probably do whatever they want because nobody's monitoring them on this whole project, they still had to set it up so that Carl would break the contract that he didn't read in order for them to go to the next step and like harvest his mind to make an android of him. Like, that was a great little nod to that mercantilist tradition of we don't like deceiving people and we don't like taking people by force, but we'll only do that if they voluntarily break their contract to us. And their contract says, if you voluntarily break your contract, you're allowing us to do this to you. Like that, just read your contract really closely before you deal with the Banu, or they'll get your head in a vice somewhere.
So the Banu were essentially based off Vodafone lawyers.
I guess so.
Yeah. I'm about to say. The Banu are clearly corporate law. That's what it is. Every Banu out there would be a great human corporate lawyer.
So, Callie, you mentioned that this was one of your favorites out of all of these that you've read. What made it particularly great in your perspective?
Character development, actually. I mean, not only do you watch the android develop, which isn't hard. I mean, she goes from being totally naive and unbelievable to a real human being in the sense of the story. And you watch Carl go from being this curmudgeon to being someone who actually cares about another character, even if she's not technically human. So I really enjoyed that. Character development in the scale of sci-fi is one of the hardest things to get right, and that they managed to do that here makes it one of my favorite stories so far in the Star Citizen universe.
I certainly agree. I feel like this guy Carl Grisham is very well fleshed out. By the time you get to even the third episode of the story, you really feel like you know who he is, you know his recent history, and they didn't do it in this just massive amount. I mean, they kind of did do it in a massive amount of exposition, but they did it in a way that felt natural as a reader. It didn't feel forced. And it also didn't bore me. Like, if they'd just gone, and then when Carl Grisham was 17, he joined the army. Like, if they had done that, obviously it would have been boring as hell. But they just sort of offhandedly mention things, and it was just a few sentences that established a backstory perfectly for you. Like, I think it was only 1 or 2 sentences that described the fact that his, mother and sister had died, and he had been in the military, and the raids by the Vandal had killed his mother and sister, and that's why he feels so disconnected from anybody, because his whole family was slaughtered, and his father was I can't remember, was his father like a drunk or something like that? I don't remember what the deal was, but they just, in a couple of sentences, they completely establish his character and what his background is, and you can understand where he's coming from really quickly and easily without a lot of exposition, and I just love how they did that.
Yeah, they did a great job. They actually, in this story, really respect the reader in a way that a lot of this fiction has missed. Like, they really do and this is not to,
of having a stupid word.
Well, the
like there was no like permacrete or like fiberglass, or like they said if something was made of something, it was just made of like a normal thing, or it was like, oh, the thing that was like this normal thing.
Yeah.
Like it
was like a harder aluminum
through.
Or something. Yeah, like that's not the great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get what you're saying. The only words you don't recognize in this whole story are the few words that are actually in the language of the Banu, and the few words that are proper nouns, like Torelli foodstuffs. Like those, you can understand that the name for a company you wouldn't recognize because it's a sci-fi story, right? That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The one thing as well, I know that's one thing that you confused you as well, but I love that they included the nomenclature of the Banu wet room.
Yeah,
but I would have loved to know what it was.
Yeah, what is a wet room?
Bad.
He went and hid in the wet room. What does that mean? My guess, and I kind of like that they didn't really establish too much, but that's just a thing. I was guessing it was the name they gave for some kind of bathing room or bathroom or something like that, like a place you go to clean.
Yeah.
That makes the most sense to me. But when I first read wet room, I thought like wet work, like CIA spies, meaning they have to kill a bunch of people, and I'm like, oh, they have a wet room in there? They like
it's just filled with blood.
Yeah.
You don't know why.
My first thought was wetware, as in like the cybernetic implant sort of thing.
See, we all it could mean soapy water, it could mean blood everywhere, it could mean cybernetic implants. Nobody knows.
But I do like the idea that the different alien cultures, like they are so alien that they actually have rooms for concepts that we don't have in humanity, which I think that is a really nice touch that you just don't see, I think, anywhere near as often as you should.
Yes.
And
no, that is an excellent kind of alien integration moment.
I also did want to mention that when he finally finds the real Angela and lets her out, and then suddenly she kisses him, I was like, oh, really? That's the way the story's going to be?
I very nearly table flipped at that point. I was like, are you fucking serious?
Like, oh, she's so happy that he saved her. She decided to stop escaping and instead kiss him. Like, what? And then she says, androids kiss funny. You check out. Let's go. I was like, oh, that makes such perfect sense. Like, I jumped to the wrong conclusion, and it was fantastic. So, I love the fact that she didn't really trust him until she tested him that way. Because she said, they haven't figured this out with androids yet. She knows that. And even though he looks and seems real, she needs to be sure. And I love that they throw the reader a little bit there.
I like that they got me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was still a little bit annoyed that they went for the whole, like, she's a woman, and the way that she can tell is that she uses her womanly wiles to, like, her female sense.
Well, the way I read that is that they had been practicing getting androids to kiss her to try and figure out, what which humans kiss like. So that's how she knows that androids kiss funny, right?
So what I liked was that he turns around, he's like, wait, hang on, how do you know that? I liked that was also his reaction. He's like, oh, yeah, fair enough.
How would one know that?
Insert slot A into tab C, and then
yes. The other thing that I really liked about her character, despite the fact that we don't get a very big background on the actual human Angela, I loved that she acted the way that you would imagine someone to act were they kept prisoner by these people for 2 years and then finally gotten free. Like, she just goes all crazy berserk on, they use the word berserk. Like, she goes crazy and just starts wailing on these people like, you kept me in cage for 2 years! How dare you? Who gives you the right? And just went crazy on this guy and like punched his head until it was bloody. And and Carl has to pull her off like, listen, he's not getting back up. You're done. You don't have to keep going. Like, that felt like a real reaction to someone. Just this enraged pain at having been in a cage for 2 years.
We need to get the fuck out of here. Your personal vendetta can wait.
Yeah, but the fact that she was taken over by that rage felt very genuine.
It did.
Yeah, that felt human.
Yes.
Which
they can use on their data.
A little bit disappointed that he did go Jason Bourne at the end as well. Like, my military training kicked in. I'm like, oh god, does everyone have to have military training that kicks in? Like, I feel like that was a little bit over the top.
I got the impression that the Banu had no military training whatsoever, so it would take a very little reminiscent military training to defeat them.
Well, from
but I
bottom,
did like
this was a Banu corporate exec project, so they had no military between them. Yeah.
But I did like that his sort of final thing was not that he was like, and then I shot everyone. It was that he's like, he shot out the gravity control panel.
And then just started floating around going, ah!
And because he's so used to being poor, he's like, man, I live in 0G all the time. Like, I know how to work in 0G because gravity is expensive. And then she's like, well, how did you know to shoot that panel? And he's like, I read Banu. That's
I know he didn't even say that. He says, I know how to read. It's just so obviously duh.
But his superpower is just that he is a state like he doesn't live in human space anymore. His thing is that he understands the Banu better than they expect him to, and that's his thing. So maybe in future a little less Jason Bourne and a little bit more regular person who's builds on their own character rather than
So he shouldn't date a gypsy is what I'm hearing here.
Sure.
Okay. Oh, the first Bourne film, he dates this gypsy. It doesn't matter. Go ahead.
No, I get the reference.
I read the books. I never saw the movies. I heard they weren't as good.
The books are so wildly different.
They are.
To give Hollywood credit,
the last book was written by a completely different author. So.
Yes. But to give Hollywood credit, they took a very right-wing story, if you want to follow the political markup here, and they turned it into a left-wing movie. Wow. And I was blown away, having read the books and seeing the movie. It was not Jason Bourne. I mean, it was Jason Bourne, but it was two different men named Jason Bourne. Which is actually the plot of the third book. Yeah, exactly right. It all comes full circle. Yeah. Anyway, Human Perspective was thoroughly enjoyable. I felt very sort of pulled along the entire time. I wanted to find out what happened next, and there was a good twist every once in a while. First, there was the twist of, oh, this is actually an android, and now he's working for them in space. And then the twist was, now he's a prisoner, and they're harvesting his brain. Like, whoa, that's different. What's going to happen next? I thought that felt really good. And I agree with you, Tim. I liked that he essentially got out of there and won by A, knowing how to read Banu, and B, thinking fast enough to shoot the gravity controls, and didn't use his like, oh, I'm a military man, just figure it out. Like, that's just a little too cliche, and I like the way that he got off at the end there. So I think that's about all I have to say about that. What about you guys? Do you have any final thoughts? I think we've covered everything I wanted to cover about this particular story, although I'm looking forward to what is obviously a sequel. Yeah. I could definitely deal with another story of Carl Grisham. I don't think it needs one. I think it ended where it needed to end, and I don't think what happens from this point on is going to be particularly interesting. Like, so there's the old adage that you should, if you're telling a story, if the story you're telling isn't the most exciting thing that's happened to your character, then why aren't you talking about that? Yeah. So that, I think this was the most exciting thing that is ever going to happen to Carl's life. I don't think we need to hear any more from him. I would love to hear more stories in this vein, absolutely, but I don't necessarily think we need a sequel.
Fair
I kind
enough.
of want to see the story of Carl escapes with the android to human space and then tries to pass her off. It's the ultimate odd couple. You know, it's
Yeah. Yeah. She's a little odd, but she's mine. Literally. I own her. I control everything she does. There's a little joystick
50
here.
Shades of Carl. Is that what we're seeing here?
Yeah, that just happened. Okay. Anyway, that seems like it might be time to sign off. I don't know if you guys think it's
Did
time.
we cover the concern of
This
the
is
week?
bullshit.
Yeah, we covered it earlier, actually.
This is
Oh, shit,
bullshit.
good enough.
The concern is there's no Star Marine.
This is bullshit.
And that's bullshit.
Fair enough.
So, thanks guys for joining us. It's been a long hour and a half. The only the last hour of which was a little bit dedicated to Star Citizen.
Shush. Shush.
Sorry about that.
It was enough Star Citizen, I think, for everyone here. They tune in for the banter.
Pretty much always join in a half hour late, and you'll get Star Citizen stuff. But there's a lot of stuff to cover. The internet is a big place.
It is.
So,
Bigger than it should be.
again, Orbital Supermax is the next story that we'll be covering, and we'll try to have another show for you in 2 weeks. Maybe that means we'll just be talking banter and Orbital Supermax if we don't have any more Star Marine news to discuss, but if that's the case, that's the case. That's what we're going to do. It's going to be a good time, and when we do have Star Citizen stuff to discuss, we will discuss it. I am Bridger signing off. Thank you guys for joining me, Callie and Tim.
You guys have a nice night.
But what if it's daytime, like where Tim is?
You guys have a nice fucking life.
Ooh. Have a nice
I'm gonna have
standard.
I'm gonna have some breakfast. This is good.
Yeah.
You know what
I don't
sucks?
know what a Denny's is. The ham's just in my fridge.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough.
What sucks is the, what is it, geometric nature of sound resistance on mixers? Like,
I don't. Okay.
Wait, what?
the way that sound
This is
works
bullshit.
is
I
you
knew
can,
all of
when
those
you're
words.
when you're choosing a volume slider.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's not geometric. It's logarithmic.
Logarithmic, sorry, is what I meant to say.
Yes,
Logarithmic
there you
nature is that when you're at the loudest volume and you bring it down a little bit, you will hear no difference in the sound. But when you're at the 5% mark and you bring it down 1%, it shuts off. Like it goes from just bam to shut off. And I keep wondering why you can't build a volume slider that accounts for the fact that it's logarithmic. And
Well, you
simply,
can, and
yeah, but why
almost
don't
all
they?
high-end,
Why don't
all
they?
high-end equipment does.
I'm just saying, it's annoying. Because I don't think
In
that
fact-
the Windows volume slider does.
No, the Windows just use linear scale.
Yes, but it's a software! How can you not just account to the fact so that when you move it 1%, it always goes down the same amount in terms of the sound that you think you hear anyway? Bridger rant out of the way for today. My neck
sun's
hurts
up now.
much.
Hey, you made the sun
Hey,
up
I
on
see.
this lovely
I don't see
Monday
this. I
afternoon.
don't quite see the sun, but I see the rays of the sun that bounced off the clouds that are coming down.
It is still a bright, sunny day here in SoCal. That's all I can say.
Ah, that
It,
ball
it
of
was
fusion.
pitch black when we started.
All right, well, I'll let you get going. We're gonna have a legacy team meeting here, a chapter meeting in a minute. I'm gonna
Sounds
go
great,
get some
I
more
take it.
aspirin. Actually, it's acetaminophen.
Aspirin. All
Actually,
right.
what is aspirin? Is aspirin acetaminophen?
Aspirin is
No,
aspirin. No, it's not
acetaminophen is paracetamol, just a different
Yeah.
name for it.
Aspirin originally was an extract of willow bark,
Right.
but is now aspirin, just all by itself.
It's now fully synthesized. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
you can make it from its individual molecules quite easily.
Yeah. Now that said, if you want to like kind of relieve the stress, I'm saying absinthe, the cure for what ails you. Sorry,
What is
I enjoyed that too much this show.
What you actually need, Bridger, is heat. You need to apply heat to your neck.
Yes. Take a cold shower, then put a hot compress on it. And
Don't
should
you
Fuck the cold
believe
shower,
in
just-
any natural remedies? On the contrary, Storm, actually, before we came to tea, I took a natural remedy derived from the bark of a willow tree. A painkiller virtually side effect free. It's got a weird name. Darling, what was it again? Mapsprin? Bapsprin? Oh, right, aspirin. It's what I bet a buck for down at the local drugstore.
You've been watching Frasier on Netflix.
No, this is from
No, it's Tim
Storm.
Minchin.
It's Tim Minchin. Have you never seen Storm?
I have not.
Go to YouTube and check out Storm. He also makes fun of homeopathy. It's hilarious. I believe my favorite quote from this whole performance is, "You know what we call alternative medicine that works? Medicine."
Yeah, he borrowed that from Ben Goldacre.
I'm sure it came from somewhere else, but this is probably the first place I heard it, and I really like it.
I've actually known Tim Minchin for a really long time.
No, you have an accent that sounds very similar to his, I think.
Yeah, he's from Frio.
Shocking.
He's down from my way.
There you go. But yeah, definitely recommend you check out Storm. It's a fantastic performance with a great message, I guess you could say.
So in the Twitch chat, we have Ashlyn saying acetylsalicylic acid. I responded there, but isn't that for fucking warts? I mean, when you get a wart on your foot, the plantar wart, you put a little thing on there, it resembles a Band-Aid, and it burns out.
Well, that's the chemical name for
goddamn
aspirin
wart.
is acetylsilic acid. No,
That
aceta...
sounds wrong.
Acetylsalicylic acid.
Acetylsalicylic. Acetylsalicylic. So it's a little longer.
Acetylsalicylic, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just an acetyl active group
Yeah.
added to the salicylic
So-
acid.
Like a liquid form is what I put on there for plantar warts, because I'm going to say, if that's what I'm taking for headaches, I'm stopping that for headaches.
No. You're using something else.
Tenactin. Okay.
All right, guys. I am heading out.
All right.
Check out
Enjoy your
Storm.
chapter meeting. I
Search
will.
Tim Minchin Storm on Google. It's on YouTube rather. It's great.
Be sure to read whatever the fuck book it was. I recommend it.
I actually put it on my wish list for Audible. Let me know how it is. I'm
See,
really
look at
liking.
that.
I recommend everything that I've read by Peter F. Hamilton. I'm reading the Greg Mendel trilogy right now.
I was kind
The
of
Mind
out
Star
after
trilogy.
he had Al Capone as one of his characters. I admit.
He did? In what book?
In a book you haven't read yet, apparently. Yes,
Oh, okay.
he did.
Well, I've read 5, 6 of his books. Nope, 7 because I've read The Great North Road.
He's got like 20 of them.
He does have quite a few. I'm working
He
my way
was
through some of the old
slightly
ones now.
less prolific than Terry Pratchett, but I'm going to argue that Terry Pratchett, a much better author.
No, see, I stopped reading the Discworld. I didn't like it. I just
Fair enough.
the
I
format.
think that comes down to
I don't know.
personality. Some
I think
of us
that's
have
just
good taste.
yeah.
Some of us are
I
butchered.
recognize its brilliance. I just didn't enjoy reading it.
That's fair. Did you read Nation?
You're a
out of
fucking
curiosity?
monster.
What?
Which one of us? Which one of us is the fucking monster?
I don't know. All right, I'm signing off for real.
Yeah,
We're both Americans, so I guess we're both fucking monsters. But that's
Yes.
a separate issue.
That's true. All right. See you guys in 2 weeks. Have a good one. Maybe by then my
Catch you
neck
around.
won't be, in pain.
No. It's